A cylinder has a volume of 43,750 pi centimeters cubed and a radius equal to 25 centimeters. Find the height. So the first thing we want to do is write out the formula for the volume of a cylinder, and you can find this in your formula book. V volume equals pi r squared h, where the r stands for the radius and the h stands for the height. So this is the formula for the volume of a cylinder. Next, we're going to substitute into our formula. So we were told that the volume is 43,750 pi centimeters cubed. We don't need to put in the centimeters cubed. So swap the V for 43,750 pi. Very, very important that you include the pi. We swap the radius for 25. Again, you don't need the centimeters, and stick brackets around it. And the height we do not know, so we leave that as h. So we've subbed into our formula. Next, we're going to simplify. So notice that we have pi on the left of the equal sign and pi on the right, so we can cancel out the pi's. And then 25 squared is 625. So we bring down the 43,750, leave the pi because we've cancelled it out, and bring down the 625h. Again, leave out the pi because we cancelled it out. We could only cross off the pi's because there was one on both sides of the equal sign. If there had only been one pi, we could not have done this. So we want to find the height. We have an equation here. We want to solve for h, get h on its own. So we're going to divide both sides by whatever is stuck onto the h. We divide both sides by 625. And 43,750 divided by 625 is 70. And 625 divided by 625 will cancel, or technically you get 1. So 625 divided by 625 is 1. So technically you'd have 1h, which is the same thing as h. But usually what we do is we just say we cancel out the number stuck in front of the h. So h is equal to 70, or 70 is equal to h. So the height is equal to 70 centimeters. Now to check if we're right, we write out the formula again. We sub in 25 for r, we sub in 70 for h, and we see that we end up getting 43,750 pi. And when we do that, we see yes, we do indeed get back to the start. So we know that 70 centimeters is correct. This is the same question, just done slightly differently, where the formula is on the left, so pi r squared h, and the volume that was given in the question is written on the right hand side. But the steps are still pretty much the same. We cancel off the pi's on both sides. We swap the radius for 25, and 25 squared gives us 625. And then we divide, this time the right hand side. Technically you're dividing both sides by 625, but we divide 43,750 by 625, and again we get 70 centimeters. So just a slightly different way of doing it, and we can see that the radius was 25, that's what was given. And the height, which is what we were looking for, ends up being 70 centimeters. So we've worked out the height of the cylinder. If the cylinder was lying on its side, technically you could say you'd worked out the length. So just be careful of the phrasing of the question. A cylinder has a volume of 32,000 pi centimeters cubed and a height of 80 centimeters. Find the radius. So very similar question to the previous one, except this time we're given the height and asked to find the radius, but the steps are still the same. Step 1, we write out the formula for the volume of a cylinder. So again, V is equal to pi r squared h, and again this is given to you in your formula book. So 32,000 pi was the volume we were given in the question, so we swap V for 32,000 pi. Again, we don't need the centimeters cubed. We do not know the r, so that stays the same. And we swap h for a set of brackets and put 80 into it because we're told that the height is 80. Next we simplify. So similar to the last question, we had a pi on both sides, which we can now cross off, we can cancel out. And again, we can only do this if there is a pi on both sides of the equals. And then we just simplify the right hand side. So we have r squared multiplied by 80. A number of times a letter, we stick them together. So we just get 80r squared. So we're going to bring down the 32,000 and leave out the pi. Bring down the equals and bring down the 80r squared. So we want to get the r on its own. So we have 80 stuck in front of it and we also have a squared. So we're going to first of all sort out the 80 that's stuck in front of the r. So we're going to divide both sides by 80. And 32,000 divided by 80 is 400. And 80 divided by 80 technically gives us 1. So you'd have 1r squared, which is the same thing as r squared, but we can just say that it cancels out. So we bring down the r squared. Now remember, we were not asked to find the radius squared, we were asked to find the radius. And the inverse, or the opposite of squared, is square root. So we're going to have to technically square root both sides. So we're going to have to square root the 400. And the square root of 400 will give us r. And the square root of 400 is 20. So r is equal to 20, or 20 is equal to r. So the radius is equal to 20 centimetres. So we can check by writing out the formula again. So v equals pi r squared h. And subbing in r to be 20 and h to be 80, which was given in the question. And seeing does our answer give us 32,000 pi? And indeed, yes it does. So it's always a good idea to check your answer. So the radius is indeed 20 centimetres. So this is the same question, just done slightly differently. This time the formula, pi r squared h is on the left of the equal sign, and the volume that was given to us in the question is on the right of the equal sign, but the steps are still the same. So we still divide across by pi, or cancel out the pi's on both sides. We still swap the h for 80 and then divide the 32,000 by 80. We get r squared equals 400. So the squared comes over the equal sign, becomes square root, or the inverse of squared is square root. So we still get 20 centimetres. So in this question, we were told the volume, told the height, and asked to find the radius. And we worked out that the radius, which is a line that goes from the centre of the circle to the edge of the circle, or the circumference, we found that the radius is 20 centimetres. If this question had asked us to find the diameter instead of the radius, we would have done the steps the same, but our answer we could have multiplied by 2, because the diameter is always twice the radius.